Hello and welcome to another video from Official Xbox Magazine. Today we're having a look at GTA 5. I've been to see the game, got some new details on it. I'm John Hicks, I'm the editor, and I'm joined by Edwin Evans-Thirlwell, online editor.
Hello there.
And as you can see in the new trailer, which Rockstar put out earlier in the week, we've actually got 3 new characters. That's a big part of the new game. So it's Franklin, Trevor, and Michael. The way that works is quite interesting. They're all sort of different guys. Like Michael's the sort of bank robber who's tried making good and doesn't like it. He's kind of getting back into it. Franklin's the sort of, you know, gangbanger who wants more. Trevor's just a lunatic. The story is kind of there's the 3 separate stories and they all kind of interlink. You can switch between them more or less at any time. It kind of forces you into it here and there, but most of the time there's a little wheel that you can just bring up and go, right, you know, whoever you are, you say, right, I want to go and be Franklin, and he's like tooling around in a stolen car, or then you go and I want to be Trevor, and he's just woken up on a beach in his underwear surrounded by corpses, or, you know, Michael's in a restaurant, that sort of thing. You can sort of hop really quite quickly. Like if it's like mid-mission, it kind of just zooms in and then zooms out again, or if it's just out in the world, it kind of goes up to a sort of satellite map and then comes back down again.
Is that, I mean, how sort of story-driven is that? Is that very much just like they'll have their own sort of routines that could be completely random, or will it very much be the case that you're cutting between distinct kind of chapters and their experiences?
They've got their own sort of routines and systems. I mean, Rockstar, they showed me like a couple of missions. They're still, you know, they're still keeping their cards quite close to their chest about how it actually works. But they're very much kind of autonomous agents. Like they're going to go off and do different things, kind of appropriate to their characters. So. There are sort of moments where you get kind of forced into something by a mission. So, for example, the demo they showed us, which is called Blitz Play, I think. It's just working 3 characters. Like in the main game, you can actually like go and get some gang members and spend some money, and the amount you spend affects the gang members you get and how successful they are, and you know how much money they get, or whether they all die in the process. This one was quite simple, and it kind of broke down to. You know, Michael was creating a distraction, and then Franklin like rams the armoured car with a truck, and Trevor's kind of away in the distance a little bit with a sniper rifle, kind of ready for the sort of waves of police who then show up to taking things on. And is it the case that you're kind of jumping through the hoops that the writers set out for you, or is it kind of like Rainbow Six, where you can get very technical in your kind of, you know, planning of these heists? I haven't seen. They didn't show us that bit yet. There are some bits where it does force you into different paths. Like in this mission, there were a few things where like it has to be Franklin driving the truck, for example. But for the most part, Rockstar was saying they're trying to keep it open and flexible, and you can kind of handle it the way that you want. And the different characters, I think it's quite interesting because they kind of speak to different parts of GTA. Like Michael's quite a lot like the kind of slightly more straight-laced GTA 4 thing. Trevor's a bit more mental, you know, in the kind of vein of.
Kay and Lynch is the example that seems to be being given here.
I don't know if he felt more like something like Vice City or Ballad of Gay Tony, actually, like a little bit more lunatic, he's a bit more interested in like kind of punching people and blowing things up. And then Franklin's a little bit more kind of San Andreas kind of, you know, street smarts kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, a cynic might look at that kind of split and think, well, they've done a wonderful kind of mass market game sort of job here, because they've got sort of distinct demographics that you could tie to each of those 3 characters.
I think that's a little unfair. I think it's. I mean, obviously, it means that they can have their cake and eat it, right? Like, because obviously, you know, there's different fans, different parts of GTA, and it sort of feels like they're all being catered to. But it's also, Rockstar are always really big on story in their games. Like, and obviously their last kind of open world release was Red Dead, which did a really good job on that. I think this one they're trying to do something a bit more ambitious. They got sort of the 3 intertwining stories, and how those work and how you experience those things. I think it sounds really interesting. I mean, we'll have to wait and see more of the game to kind of really get to measure it, but it sounds really cool.
In terms of, like, I mean, with the heists, if you're if you're more or less successful on a heist, does that affect the plot at all? Is it the case that if you make less money, you'll get less to spend on a subsequent heist, perhaps? Or
yeah, I mean the money is, again, Rockstar being a little bit cagey about this, but like money is important. You can use it to sort of buy property and clothing and all that kind of stuff, and the money goes towards other prep and that sort of stuff. So it doesn't sound like it's, and again, because this was only this was a sort of small H heist that they showed us, rather than like the capital H heist, which is they've said is kind of what they're building the game around, is the kind of the big kind of huge Heat style showdowns. There's like a sort of fixed number of those that kind of drive the story on. So those are really significant, and the sort of the cash you get back from those will affect how you develop and what you do.
It's interesting, because I can't remember GTA ever being quite as dependent on certain missions, which are kind of set up within the story, and that being the kind of the core of the game. And is there a concern that perhaps the sandbox spontaneous element of GTA will suffer, or is that not?
I don't think so, because, well, not least because the sandbox is massive. Like the actual world itself is intimidatingly huge. Like when the first time they showed it to us, we're kind of just jumping out the back of a plane, and then you parachute down through the countryside, and there's all these animals in it, and then you go into the city, which is teeming with people, or you can go like scuba diving, and there's like fish and that sort of stuff. Like the actual world, the sandbox is gigantic, and the level of detail in there is boosted. There's more pedestrians on the streets, all that kind of stuff, and there's more sort of incidental events. Like this is something that was in GTA 4, which they were sort of random encounters you could have on the street. Like one of them, there was this kind of recurring character who was a serial killer, who you'd kind of hear about in the radio, and then you could actually bump into him and sort of help him out with something, and it became clear quite late on in the mission that actually, oh my god, it's that guy off the radio, and that's the thing. So they're kind of doing more of that kind of serendipitous stuff in the missions themselves. I think it's out in this open space, and they just sort of send the AI at you, and I think it's still going to be that sort of interacting with that world has always been a huge part of what makes GTA what it is. So I think it's absolutely still there.
Are there any kind of I suppose one of the things that sort of came up in a lot of GTA 4 previews, for instance, like one of the kind of the street sites that people fixated about was stuff like people having coffee and dropping it if you ran past them, or being on the phones. Is there kind of like an equivalent, standout sandbox thing that you've seen in GTA 5?
I didn't see any of it. I think it's one of those ones where I'd have to, because it was a sort of hands-off demo, so I'd have to sort of sit down and play it and actually sort of really explore. But there's just loads of incidental detail, like when you're walking around like Vinewood Boulevard, that's the equivalent of Hollywood Boulevard. There's like these tour buses you can take out. They've got these sort of like horrible street entertainers dressed up as popular characters from popular culture, which includes Republican Space Rangers. They're back, and there's all that sort of extra detail. And I think the Hollywood example is there was some gin-soaked old movie star rolling up and down, yelling at people about how she used to be famous and that sort of stuff. So there's that sort of thing. The pedestrians themselves, I think it's kind of similar to GTA 4. I mean, it's very obviously a similar kind of technology, so it's not like they're all going to have suddenly individually modelled earrings or anything like that. Although the facial animation is a lot better, but in terms of sort of dropping coffee and talking on phones and that kind of stuff, I would imagine it's probably similar.
Okay, cool. And I think the thing they're not talking about is the multiplayer, but they are, because they're talking about how they're having this groundbreaking new approach, but they're not telling us anything about it. I mean, do you worry that? I don't know. What are your thoughts on the multiplayer?
I'm not too worried about it, actually, because GTA 4's multiplayer was the first time they did it. It was kind of it riffed on kind of fan-made mods for earlier GTA games, and it wasn't that great. Like it was like the experience of exploring the city was amazing because Rockstar's is really good at making cities and making worlds to mess around in. So that was really fun. The mission types were sort of briefly fun, but they weren't updated very much, and they quickly filled up with griefers. And it was a bit sort of like first pass sort of thing. Red Dead got it much better. Like the multiplayer in Red Dead Redemption was really, really popular. That was really, really well liked. And I think now they've got, you know, they're going to nail it this time. They're going to go right. They've learned the lessons. They've learned what works. It's going to get supported properly. I wouldn't know what they're going to do other than, you know, I'm sure there'll be team deathmatch, but there'll be other stuff that isn't team deathmatch, and I think will be suitable to GTA. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what that was. I mean, GTA 4, the kind of cops versus crooks thing, that was the best multiplayer mode for me by far, because it sort of lends itself to that sort of, you know, frantic chase through the city thing. And I think, particularly if a single player game is going to be built around heists, I'd be fairly surprised if the multiplayer wasn't built around heists.
It feels like, I mean, it feels like something that's is bound up with another question, in as much as when we hear about cross-generation titles such as Assassin's Creed 4, it tends to be the case that the developers are hinting new connected features, and obviously there's a certain amount of buzz about the connected features of next-generation consoles in general. So, I mean, do you see any possibility there? Do you think we could have a sort of a Watch Dogs level of kind of like all-pervading online in GTA, or do you think they'll want to keep that separate?
It's a very interesting idea, and Rockstar are very ambitious with their titles. I mean, the sort of stated ambition for this is to be like the best open world game ever, I think. I'm sure they, you know, even if it wasn't on the list, they will have seen the buzz around Watch Dogs E3 last year. You know, they'll know, and I think I would be very surprised if there wasn't some sort of fairly ambitious multiplayer thing in it, and you know, the ability to kind of interact with people in the world. I think there was an element of that with the mobile phones in GTA 4. In GTA 5, everybody has smartphones, obviously, and so there's all sorts of things that you could do for that in terms of like kind of sending location data, or God knows, like geocaching in the hills or something like that. Like there's all sorts of ways they could take it, and I think you know, like they haven't revealed any details. It's all guesswork at the moment, but I have very high expectations.
And do you expect a next-gen version, or?
You wouldn't rule it out, would you? But it's coming out in September. It's almost inconceivable that the next Xbox will be out by then, or even the next PlayStation. So it's definitely coming out for 360. It's definitely coming out for PS3. They'll, you know, historically they'll do a PC version, and maybe, you know, that sort of higher resolution sharing tools thing will show up in the next console. But I think most of the effort will go into 360 is my suspicion. So that's us done. Thanks very much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and you can find more GTA coverage on oxm.co.uk.